The evening began as one of those usually terrible evenings, with only sorrow and resentment to chew on, then it grew much worse. Alternatively, was it improved? I have to admit there was a lot depending on precisely how much rage I felt chewing at my belly. It was about 10 o'clock, and I was seated in a generally dark house with just a floor lamp to provide illumination. After several hours of focusing on my assignment, I was not aware of the darkness outside the man-made cosmos just feet from my chair. It just fit my mood exactly. My legs were crossed, and I was noting things and compiling lists on a yellow legal pad in my lap. By the time the doorbell rang, I was quite involved. Looking up, still not sure the hour, I first saw the darkened house and wondered, who the hell could it be at this time of night? Since she hadn't been home that early on a girls' night out in months, I was very darn sure it wasn't my wife. I dropped the pen on the floor and laid the legal pad there. It was at that moment that I became truly bone-fatigued. The job did not wear me out. I was exhausted from living the soul-crushing reality I knew. I started toward the entrance and flicked the 2 wall switches activating the corridor lights and external illumination. It is never good to see 2 policemen waiting for me, just peephole view of the door. I inhaled deeply, opened the door, then said, "What should I do now?" Though I was attempting to be witty, they hardly smiled. This was not a social visit. "Are you Michael Bradley?" he inquired. Sure, I was aiming for friendliness. "Is Jean Bradley, your wife, here?" he begged. Again, right a second time. "Could I kindly inquire what this relates to? Ever noticed how police seldom respond to your inquiries? Please let us know when we arrive." Not waiting for a response, the closest cop across the transom moved. I shake my head and blocked his path. "Not at all, I kindly ask for your pardon." He looked shocked. It was as though nobody had ever turned him down before. Number. "You could either leave or answer a question I asked you. I was fast running low on nice." He backed off, but he didn't respond to my inquiry. "You have spent all night here?" I crossed my arms and stared at him like the mutt next door had dropped. A poo dropped on my porch. "Surely. And unless you respond to my inquiry, that is the last response I am offering you." "Regarding this?" Since they eventually addressed my issue, I suppose I would have given them enough to believe they could induce me to perspire should they need to. "Your wife has been brought to Memorial Hospital after injury. That's an odd thing a husband experiences. One minute you are organizing your wife's demise, the next you are concerned about her welfare. What happened? I very worried. Not yet ready to share with me, were they? Come in, please." That tiredness was starting to resurrect. I breathed, backed off, and gestured for them inside. They did. I gestured to the dimly lighted living room, and they strolled in tensely as though it were a training session at one of those shooting galleries. I turned on the ceiling lights, then settled into my chair. "So, could you now kindly explain me what happened?" Wearing off worried my wife, and I started to feel enraged. They exchanged glances, and the one I assumed was the senior cop saying, "Sir, we regret to let you that your wife was shot this evening." Later on, I realized he was looking for my reaction. His words seemed practiced. The SOB tried to read me. I admit the news really affected me. "Is she all right?" I inquired. "As asked, sir. You might recall that we mentioned she works at Memorial Hospital." My thoughts cleared, and I considered for a moment. "No, you stated she was brought there. You never mentioned her dead or alive state. Now either get the hell out or answer the question." By the time I finished it, I was screaming. Once more, they stared at each other. Much later, I questioned whether they were upset at their own incapacity to threaten me, frustrated at not being able to read me, or just unsure of what to do. Once more, it was the senior officer. "Right now, your wife is under surgery. The result is vague." To my utter astonishment, those 2 lines knocked the wind right out of me like a ton of bricks. I started hyperventilating, a reaction that made me ashamed later. When I regained my wits about me, the 2 cops were kneeling by my chair shouting, "Breathe, breathe," and like a boob I was nodding. Was my wife killed by gunfire? The ugly woman was shot? Apart from me, who else would like to do that? Was that what I said aloud? I guessed not, as the 2 cops were still exhorting me to breathe. Could you perhaps tell me anything else? They both stood and maintained the same posture as before, although they were more open now. My personal dilemma was behind me. Your wife was in a motel room with a buddy. His wife must have entered someplace, as close as we can determine. She most likely simply knocked on the door and he replied without looking. She kept the last couple for your wife, and dumped most of her clip into him nonetheless. Luckily for your wife, she doesn't seem to be a great marksman. While some of her rounds landed precisely, others went wild. Though they believe your wife may make it, the boyfriend is dead. Indeed. Once they at last begin to share data, they truly let you have it all. It dawned on me at that. You are here then to find out whether I participated? Their faces betrayed none of their ideas. Though we know who shot, there is always the issue of further participation. We also need to know that your wife is safe to return home when ready. That must have been the first smile I had the whole night. She has been protected the last few weeks. I wonder why that should change just now. They both turned to me as though I didn't understand. I decided on impulse to present these two a small gift. Tensed clearly, the two cops reached down to the side of my chair. The younger one actually touched his weapon. Don't pee your underpants, young lad. Simply an envelope. I said, I saw my lawyer today, and handed them the manila envelope I had sitting beside my chair. She advised me to create some more lists, oddly, and handed me a list of tasks to complete. I then leaned to the other side of my chair and raised the legal pad on which I had been jotting divorce notes. Opening the envelope, the senior officer started looking at the pictures I had of my wife being intimate with a man I had never met. You lads want to know the man she was with's name? I probed. The top officer addressed without looking up, as you seem to already know. Like two boys who had recently come upon sexual films on the internet, they were lost in obsession. The junior officer first spoke up at that point. Boy, absent the holes in them, they truly seemed different. He was chastised by the senior officer right before me. Turning then to me, he replied, I'm sorry, sir. That was improper. He is fresh. I nodded slightly. Right now, I was thinking of more major issues. In the hospital was my adulterous spouse. She might not, or she might make it. I guess the divorce was on wait for a few days or weeks before we saw how things would turn out. They repeated their advice that I was not to damage my wife when she arrived, after stating that I had been home all night and recalling a very lucky call from my brother that helped to prove my alibi. I just reiterated my previous answer since I saw no need to go into more detail, and they appeared content. I got from my chair and showed them out when they were ready to go. As I made my way back to my chair, sat, and started to consider this fresh material, I turned down the lights. She had a gunshot wound. I never would have seen that. Although I detested her for what she had done, I never wished her dead. As if that were going to happen, I wanted her to spend a lifetime of regret crying at night as she lay alone in her bed, unaltered by a man's hand. Starting the evening very purposefully, I worked on the tasks provided by my lawyer. It was a fantastic method for me to escape the questions that have tormented me since learning that my wife was having an affair. I knew who now, but I still couldn't figure out why. Our marriage had challenging times, to be sure. She was among those persons who seemed to be irritable about almost anything. Sometimes I could swear she sought out something to be dissatisfied with. Until the divorce preparations separated us, I had never really understood that. I started to get perspective. Whatever drove her to ruin her life suddenly made me somewhat suspect in a murder case. The bits began to fit together, and it was then I understood I was not alone in this horrible, disorganized tangle of lies and treachery. When I contacted the private cell of my lawyer, she answered the fourth ring. I am sending you a bill you will still be paying off with Social Security benefits. This better be good, otherwise so help me. Sheila Goldstein was a shark, and her take-no-prisoners approach helped me to relax. Nobody would have guessed that a divorce attorney might have a sense of humor. She retorted, Who says I'm kidding? I need you to get in touch with a nighttime working criminal attorney. On the phone, I heard a crash. Tell me you did nothing foolish, she asked. Not true, but someone else did. The cops visited me just now. The wife of the turd followed after them and shot both of them. She is in surgery. He passed. I'm guessing the wife lacks a lawyer. She needs one. Just listen to me. Tell me you had nothing to do with this. Say it as you mean it, for God's sake. I responded, I had nothing to do with this. She insisted now, as I should have expected. I am speaking the truth here. I have nothing to have influence on it. The cops were here and informed me about it. Though I had nothing to do with it, I believe they were thinking the same thing you are now. All right? Then why is this your issue? She asked. It isn't, but I suppose suffering likes company. Had we not had that come to Jesus conversation in your company, it most certainly could have been me. I only want to support her. On the other side of the phone, I heard a firm, deep sigh. All right. Do you know where she is? I asked. You mean Emma Collins? Was your wife seeing another man? Yes, considering Emma Collins. She is nowhere known to me, but since it is a tiny town and they was shot in town, I am presuming she is at the police station. All right, you remain at place. I'll ask an associate whether he could go down there. If nothing else, he could watch her till she hires her own attorney. I said, I have to visit the hospital at some time. All right, you can visit the hospital, but avoid being alone with her. Should something go wrong, I want 10 feet separating you and her with minimum 2 witnesses. Understood, I responded. Also, Michael? Definitely. You are known to me. You are contradictory. I apologize for what is happening, but it will be all right as you are not accountable. You might hear me. She responds, Yes, ma'am. I listen to you. All right, go do what you have to do. Still, act yourself. I hung there contemplating. Did I say exactly yes, ma'am? Why does she treat me as if a small child? And why does it work so brilliantly? Notwithstanding, she provides me guidance and is looking after me at a period of lost orientation. I had to now make her proud of me. I changed and had a shower. I would have hurried to be at her side several weeks ago, but Jean extinguished that love. Now all I had to do was make sure she received appropriate medical treatment. The hospital had our insurance records. One might wait until the divorce. Whatever the result, I was not going to show my clothes. Instead, I would complete my husbandly responsibilities by making sure strangers performed their roles. As it happened, I could have gone more slowly. She was drugged through the night and in recovery when I got there. I handed them our insurance records, spoke with a surgeon who stated Jean was likely to live, and headed back home. Should there be a change, or when she woke up, they would call me. My return home came far after midnight. Though tired, I cannot sleep, so I went through a mental checklist instead. Except for one quite challenging chore, everything could wait until tomorrow. I had to phone Jean's parents. I thought about waiting until dawn, but they would never pardon me if she turned bad and they couldn't say farewell. Whatever I considered of Jean, her folks treated me kindly all the time. I so grabbed the phone and gave a call. Hi. What time it is right now? Her father asked. Indeed, Joe, I am aware of I had to pick up calls. Jean had been hurt. They brought her to Memorial Hospital. I respond. Her father digested the material, and there was a brief wait. Damaged? What do you imply to be injured? She was shot tonight by her lover's wife. Joe? I gave my reply. Gun? What the bloody hell are you referring to? You are intoxicated? How did she come upon her shot? No, Joe, I am sober now. I visited the hospital. Earlier the police were here. She is under surgery, and the doctor assures her she will be all right. They have her asleep, hence visiting there tonight is useless. I simply wanted you informed of this. With her right now, are you? Her dad inquired. I am home, not sure, I said. Not should you be with her? He asked questions, too worn out to get enraged. Joe, did you listen to me? Her lover's wife fired at her. You nuts. Jean does not have a lover. Indeed, Joe, she does or she did. She is going to live. He is dead. I spoke. As I listened to Joe telling Marie what I had told her, there was silence on the other end of the call. That is, silence of a sort. Joe returned to the call eventually. Michael, is it possible you could be mistaken? Regarding the gun or the cheating, I inquired. Both, though. No, Joe. I became suspicious 2 weeks ago and paid someone to keep an eye on her. The police arrived while I was looking at transcripts and pictures. I visited the hospital and conferred with her doctor. All truthful is what I say. Again, there was stillness. Your course of action is what he inquired. I'm apologies, Joe. I went to a lawyer already. My divorce from her is underway. Michael, isn't it something you feel in your gut? She's going to need you. She's been shot. He asked for pardon. Though she was out screwing her lover, I too needed her, Joe. Now that's it? He asked questions. Basically, I'll make sure she is insured through all this, and I'm sure the attorneys will have more to say about finances and stuff. But I have been lied to too much. That's in some respects less than the intimacy. She did it so brilliantly that I never knew she had lied straight to my face. I never guessed. Joe needed some time to digest that. What then set off your suspicions? He queried. It was simply her being constantly away. We used to do stuff together, but lately she has just been planning without me. I hired someone, and he showed me what Jean was hiding from me since I knew I had to see for myself. My mind then became made up. You know, I was looking forward having grandkids, and her mother was too. He sounded to me like a beaten man, and it brought me right back. Knowing they desired grandchildren, I wanted us to present them to them. I am sorry, Joe. Indeed I am. One favor from you will help us, he queries. Here comes it, I thought. They want me to wait to make any decisions until Jean is well so we may discuss. That surprised me. Not that, was it? Don't treat yourself as a stranger. Marie and I consider you as the son we never had. Even if you divorce our daughter, I do not want to lose you. My ears were ringing unbelievable. Through all that had happened, the betrayal, the evidence, the attorney, the shooting, all of it, this is what first brought tears to me. Joe, I adore you guys too. Indeed I do. I swear I'm not planning any trips. That is why we hung up. I felt tired now, just as I was bone tired before. I dropped fast asleep in my bed, still covered in clothing. Though I wasn't ready to get up, the morning sun woke me. I got up just long enough to pull the shade, strip, and slip back into bed for another 2 hours of much-needed but restless sleep. Showered, got dressed, and headed out for a snack before going to the hospital when I could sleep no more. I arrived at Jean's room about 11. Her parents were on their way already. She was startlingly awake and attentive. I anticipated her to be still sleepy or drugged or something. But what did I know? Before I had witnessed a gunshot victim. Expecting guilt, I entered her room. Boy, wasn't I surprised? She glanced at me one time and burst, "You jerk, nasty man. You did indeed kill him. David was dead under your hand. That was only intimacy, so much for it. It had no bearing on anything." 2 orderlies were standing next to me, and 2 nurses suddenly were walking fast past me. I suppose they thought I posed a threat. I gazed at her without any pity in my heart. His wife did not kill him. Rather, I suppose you two were messy, or maybe she is simply wiser than I am. That stripped her sails of their breeze. She started to cry as she lay back in her bed. Soon I was advised to go, and glad to comply. I asked myself as I strolled down the corridor whether I ever knew this woman. She most obviously did not know me. 2 security guards met me as I went toward the elevator. "May we talk with you, sir?" Looking at them, I responded, "No, you might not." I had already cleared myself after talking with the cops. I won't let the cries of a lying, cheating woman let you believe you have any relevance whatsoever. If you so wish, you can call the police. I will talk with them, but you would simply appear like fools. Your call. Nevertheless, should you touch me, I will sue. I'd had enough by now. Not knowing what to do as I entered the elevator to depart, Tweedledee and Tweedledum stared at one another. Never again did the cops harass me. Jean tried to have the cops charge me, but there wasn't much more for them to do when the gunman was captured standing over the body and confessing constantly on the way to the station. Though I occasionally wonder if there is any difference, the attorney I hired for Emma Collins managed to get her into a psych institution rather than a prison cell. I periodically see her and she seems as clear as anyone I know. Once she asked me, "Any chance you could bring in a hacksaw concealed behind a chocolate box?" I realized then she was as sane as you or I. After all, I suppose the attorney was very good. The divorce came through without any conflict. Though she desired all we had and everything I would ever have, Jean wanted me no more. She settled for half and without alimony. Her requests bored the judge, who told Mrs. Bradley, "You have a job. You are competent." I considered getting the words etched on my arm. Looking back, I primarily recall a brilliant attorney who directed, chastised, treated me like a child, and kept me out of trouble. Two outstanding in-laws that I still feel close to, and a common-sense judge with a lot of wisdom. About the ex-wife, I scarcely give her any thought at all. And today's narrative ends here. Should you like it, kindly thumbs up this video and leave a comment below. The algorithm pushes my material farther, thanks in part to your support. Remember to mark that subscribe button if you are new to the channel. It certainly helps me maintain writing fresh tales for you. I appreciate you seeing. Next one will see you.